All right, in this video, we're going to take a look at the firewall that is built into Windows and has been there for quite some time. Now, we talked about the fact that you have a hardware firewall, also called a network firewall because it's out on your network, and a software firewall or an operating system firewall that's actually installed on the computer. Now, this is an interesting thing about these different operating systems we have. Windows has had this firewall for quite some time, for a very long time. Windows XP, I think, is when it was first put in. Mac OS has a firewall, but it's not turned on, and you have to go turn it on. And so we'll look at that too. And then Linux doesn't usually have a firewall installed. You have to usually install the firewall and then activate it. So why the difference? I mean, shouldn't we have a firewall? That is something that protects us from outside sources trying to get in. Well, there's something that you have to understand about what's going on. Your computer is not set up to just listen to anybody that's trying to get into it. It doesn't work that way. As you know, we have these ports that we use. For instance, 443 is how you use the internet through a web browser. So anytime you go to google.com, port 443 is used. 443, though, is not open on your computer. In other words, if a computer on the outside of your system tries to say, I want to talk to you on port 443, your computer doesn't respond because it doesn't have any, well, just straight up, it doesn't have, it's not a server for websites, and that's what 443 would be used for. So it doesn't do anything. However, there are ways to get into operating systems through flaws in programming, and that's why you do those updates. So let's say you're running Word. You double click Word, you open it up, and you're using Word. Word connects to the internet. Word creates this connection so it can, get clip art and do other things. If Word has a problem within its programming, there might be the opportunity for somebody on the network to get in through that problem that needs to be patched. That's why, again, everything is always receiving patches and updates. So there is this possibility that you could get in through this hole in the operating system, even though your computer is not really out there listening and allowing people to connect in. And that's why there's a difference. Microsoft's approach is you put the firewall on, it's there from the beginning, it's turned on, you're ready to go. Mac is, well, it's there, you can go turn it on if you want that extra layer of security. And then Linux is, well, there's not much reason for it unless you are going to run some kind of server stuff or allow remote access to your computer. And if that's the case, you probably should install it. That's just the approach. So let's take a look at what's built into Windows. We'll just type firewall, and we get a few things. We get Windows Firewall right here, firewall and network protection. This is the system settings. This is the new system settings. If you've been around for a while, they switch from control panel into this new system settings, which is a lot more streamlined into what people are trying to actually find. Control panel was kind of like this big area that every single kind of setting got dumped into. And then we've got Windows Defender Firewall here. So let's take a look at the system settings one first. What do we get there? Well, again, because it's more focused, we get really what you would want to see. So if you're going to mess with your firewall on Windows, this is usually what you're trying to change. This is one thing that really, really confuses people. Because firewall is turned on, and let's say you have your computer, it's wireless, and you're taking it around to different places. So you go down to MIC Wi-Fi and you say, okay, I'm going to attach to this open network. Once you start to do that, Windows sends you a message. So as soon as that connection is finally established, Windows says, is this a private network or is it a public network? And they give you a little explanation, but to me, it's not as clear as it could be. So what ends up happening is people overthink these definitions right here, these two. They go, well, let's see, is McWi-Fi a private network or public? Well, they're a private institution, they're not a government. So maybe they have a private network, and I'm attaching to that. That's not what this is referring to. This is referring to, is it your network? Is this your network, or is it somebody else's network? That's really what this is asking. Now, the reason why they don't just say it that way is because you might go to your friend's house and you might attach to their network. So it's not your network, it's their network, but you're attaching so you can print to the printer. Maybe they're going to share a file off their computer, and then that is a private network. And that's really what they're after here. They're really asking you, all right, are you attaching to something where you're going to share files and you're going to access printers and you're going to do that kind of activity? If so, when you select private network, it actually turns the firewall off. So it turns off the firewall because if the firewall is on, it makes it harder to make those connections. Some printers then you'll see and then they'll disappear, or they never truly connect. That kind of stuff happens. And then on a public network, yeah, you're basically saying I'm around a bunch of different people in an airport and I just connected to the wireless connection. Yeah, I don't want to say private because that might open up my computer or expose my computer to others. Now, truthfully, so we will get to the practical, but truthfully, the situation here is that you would have to share files. So you'd have to have an open share on your computer. So you went in and selected a folder and said, share this out in order for people to really be able to get into your stuff easily. Again, if you didn't do that, then you're dealing with the other, like, well, maybe there's a security hole, and because I'm in an airport and that's where people are going to hang out and try to hack me, they know about the security hole, so they do a little scan and go, oh, they got that security hole. I can jump onto their system. And then your firewall would be important to keep them out. So private network, yeah, I'm going to share some stuff with these people. Public network, I'm not. Now notice that this is the one that's active. My network that I'm connected to here is my private network, and the firewall is on. And that's because really in this particular virtual machine, I don't really do anything. But it's easy. Let's say I was trying to get some stuff done, like I did do a share, or there's a share out there and I'm having trouble finding it and it's just not coming up. Then I would come in here and I would say, okay, let me turn off the firewall. And there's a security warning and there's like, hey, you're turning off the firewall. They let you know. Down here, incoming connections prevents incoming connections when on a private network, blocks all incoming connections, including those in the listed of allowed apps, which you can check that. And then even the allowed applications are actually not allowed into your system. So private network, no problem. Turn that off. As a matter of fact, I would say that's what you need to do. You need to have that off. It will help. If you're on a private network, there's no reason why you should have your firewall on. So private network is active, firewall is off. Now let's look at this domain network. This is actually if you were connecting into a business that has a domain. So if you're connecting into a business and you recognize that term domain, this applies to you. But a lot of Windows versions won't even have this. It depends on, if you've got 11 Pro or 11 Home, that kind of thing. So you may not see this. That's not a problem if you don't. And the public network, I'm going to be on McWi-Fi, firewall turned on. Those are the main settings. Those are the things that people would want to normally change. Now, these links are going to take us to a whole nother world, shall we say. It's loaded up here. And this is our old control panel. So that's why it looks different. In other words, they haven't bothered to update it. They just leave it the way it was. And this gets us into the advanced security. So again, how did I do that? Well, I just said, I would like to see the advanced settings, and there it is. You can go straight to allow a certain app through the firewall, and they've got It's kind of a place to do that. But basically, once you get to this point, oh my goodness, I would not be messing with it. That's just don't mess with it. This is a very, very powerful software firewall or application layer firewall. And people, it's built right into your machine. Most people never have to come in here, do anything. Things are pretty much automatic. And if you do come in here and do something, there's a good chance you'll stop something from working. So I tell people install Windows into a virtual machine, and I'll add that to the course material so you can do that if you want. But you install it into a virtual machine and then you just, wreak havoc. You can do whatever you want to with this. And I tell my security students, I'm like, it's right there for you. Install it into a virtual machine. You want to see how a firewall works and you want to see the kind of power that's available on most network-based firewalls. You can get in there. So for instance, as we said, ingress, egress, inbound, outbound. This is everything that is allowed right here. And you see the check marks. Some of them don't have check marks. That means that they're not on. They're not doing anything, but the check marks are. And yeah, you can turn off, there's our spooling service. That's for our printer right there. So we can turn off all these spooling services and just basically say, don't allow any of this to come into the system and just totally block it out. And then if we were sharing a printer off of this machine, it wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to do it. And if you don't want something going out, for instance, there's some gaming stuff in here. There's Feedback Hub somewhere around here. Here's your core networking stuff. Oh yeah, Game Bar. So that's just something that'll let you record and do stuff. Those of you that game are familiar with it. You can just pull it up and say, I want to block that connection. Okay. And now it's blocked. Now, if I launch Game Bar, see if I can even. Game Bar is, yeah, there's nothing in my save game. So it's not going to let it run. And you may not get an error that says, I'm being blocked by your firewall. Instead, it just will not do what it's supposed to do. Of course, it's easy to turn it back on, allow the connection, and enable it. So enable that rule, allow it, and there it is. Now, disabling the rule just means I'm not really making a decision on this. I'm just not going to have a rule for it. That's a whole different line of thinking. That's where some of these are. It's like I don't have a rule for it. None of my file sharing has been turned on. None of this has been turned on this system. But if you was to go in and just real quick, if I was going to go in and right click on one of these and go to properties, then I could go to sharing and I could share it and I could do advanced sharing. Once I do that, then where this is going to start, it's going to set some rules here. It's going to activate it, say this is allowed to come in or out, depending on what you need. So this is extremely powerful. I just wanted to show it to you so you could see, wow, that is some kind of detail that you can get into on inbound and outbound rules. And that's the way firewalls work, right? You have to have one for coming in, one for going out. And we don't have any of these set up. And I'm not sure. There we go. So here's your computer is not protected. Why? Because I deactivated that on my private. So my firewall is not on that. And so just giving me a little report. Any case, again, if you're going to do it, I would do it on a machine that you don't care about. You definitely can set some rules that will really mess things up. But it is really, really cool. And it is really, really good to know that, yes, indeed, you have a very, very powerful firewall already installed right there in Windows. All right, let me change the share here and we'll take a look. I don't think I have the firewall turned on the Mac. So stop the share and reshare, but this time just the entire desktop. So we'll go ahead and minimize that. And I'm just going to search for firewall. Now, if I go into settings, that might make it a little easier for me. Oh, there's all my files. Let's go back. Come on, you came up. Now I got to scroll. I got too many things about firewalls. All right, so there's firewalls in advanced settings, and there's turn the firewall on or off. So let's take a look in the settings. Here we are. There's our settings and Wi-Fi, and there's the firewall, and it's inactive. And we just turn that on, and now it's active. Take a look at options, and here's their firewall, block all incoming connections. We definitely could do that. We don't want to do that. There's things that you will soon find out if they needed that incoming connection, but you can block them all. And of course, these are the ones that are allowed. Python is on there. This is for printing, and you can change some of those settings, and then you can add in what you would like. And so it takes some knowledge to go, well, what am I going to add in? Well, you got to go find that application that you're talking about and allow it or disallow it, block it or allow it. And that's very much like Microsoft's, where Microsoft lists them all out, and then there was a bunch that didn't have our little green mark on it, meaning they're not active. So it would be like them just populating this screen with things that, oh, well, we haven't turned that on yet, or we haven't turned it off yet. Stealth mode. Don't respond to or acknowledge attempts to access this computer from a network by testing applications such as ping. In other words, I won't answer your pings. And that's not normal for anybody to actually want to do. But yeah, so pretty advanced there that you can get in and mess with that. I'm going to leave it off for now. All right, so that is getting into firewall settings that are on the two major operating systems out there. And if you got any questions, anything more you'd like to see, let me know.